Tonight's Neon is hot, y'all, because we're diving into the artists didn't just make hits. They rewired entire decades. These are the voices that pushed boundaries, broke rules, and left fingerprints on every corner of pop and rock. If you think you know their stories, buckle up because the truth behind these legends hit a whole lot harder. Hello, hello, hello. We're back. Welcome in, everybody. You guys, tonight's jukebox journey is not as business as usual, okay? We're doing something I absolutely love. We're going to stitch together a chain of artists who defined an entire generation, not just with their music, but with their fingerprints on culture, style, rebellion, and raw originality. This isn't a stroll through the 80s and beyond. This is a deep dive into the artists who changed the temperature of every room they ever walked in. Now, what we're doing tonight is simple but powerful. Each segment links to the next, not by genre, not by sales, not even by popularity, but by impact. By the ways these artists pushed boundaries and shifted expectations and cracked open doors, the next person could sprint through. Now, you're going to hear stories you've never heard before, the behind the scenes sparks, the accidental inventions, the creative risk that turned into cultural earthquakes. This is a night built for Gen Xers, old school souls, and anybody who still believes music should hit you in the chest and rearrange your day. Now, yes, we are starting with a queen who didn't just break into the scene, she exploded into it, leaving neon footprints the world still follows. So we're going to kick it off here with this first young lady after we get over here to our wonderful chat and say, hello, Ellen. I'm so happy to see you, honey. Thank you for being here. Anybody else that's walked in at this time, I'm very happy you're here too. Thank you so very much. You are appreciated. Now we're going to get into this because this is going to be fun tonight. I've tried to, soup it up a little bit. So here we go. Our first young lady of the night, believe it or not, she was just, and rightfully so, it should have been a long time ago, just put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Let's give it a try. All righty, here we go. And we're doing this one. Yay! I got it there. Okay, when Cyndi Lauper burst into the scene in the early 1980s, she wasn't just another bubblegum pop act, okay? She was walking art project, right? A neon explosion, a total rule breaker who didn't ask permission and didn't wait for industry approval. Now, before her solo success, she'd already lived an entire lifetime's worth of setbacks. She fronted a band called Blue Angel, blew out her vocal cords to the point that doctors really questioned if she was ever going to get to sing again. She worked retail jobs and even lived in a shelter for a while. But even in those low points, those who heard her voice already knew she wasn't built like anyone else, okay? There was a texture in her tone, a raspy and bright in the same breath. It really mapped her emotions like fingerprints, Hi, Blood Sister. Good to see you. I know, Ellen. Cyndi Lauper was one of my favorites. Seriously. I mean, I love music and I've got a little bit of a background, and she was just one of my idols. Absolutely. Now, long before Girls Just Want to Have Fun ever hit the radio, Cyndi was quietly becoming one of the strongest storytellers of her generation, sharpening her pen and her ear and her identity. Her breakthrough wasn't accidental. Girls Just Want to Have Fun started as a male-written punkish track, but Cindy flipped it. She rewrote that energy and transformed it into a feminist party anthem wrapped in candy colors. Now, she fought to cast real women of all ages, sizes, and walks of life in the video, something the label pushed back on hard, but Cindy refused to make a video that objectified women just to move units. My girl. That single decision changed MTV. Suddenly, you had a woman in a total creative control of her image, her styling, her choreography, and her whole damn narrative. Seriously, here's the kicker. Cindy didn't even like being a fashion icon. She used clothes like a language, mixing thrift store finds with Japanese street fashion long before it became mainstream. Designers later admitted that entire collections were inspired by Lauper's aesthetic without ever giving her credit. Pardon me. Still dry in Texas. Now, a lot of people don't know how deep her musicianship goes, okay? She has perfect pitch, the rare kind. And she knows for creating vocal arrangements on the spot, she's got it. She's a seasoned producers can barely keep up with her. Her hit, Time After Time, was recorded in a single day. But what most fans don't know is that Cindy nearly didn't include it on the album. She worried it was too vulnerable, too stripped down, and too far from the hypersaturated 80s pop sound. That vulnerability ended up being her superpower. The song became her first number one hit and has been covered more than 200 times across genres. To this day, musicians cite her phrasing on that song as a masterclass, soft at the edges, strong at the center, and painfully honest. Now, her cultural impact is bigger than her hair, okay? The fashion and the neon. But Cindy was one of the first pop stars to openly fight for LGBTQ. And at a time when it threatened careers. She dedicated work to her sister, launched the True Colors Fund, and it used her fame as a protective shield for others long before celebrity activism was considered safe. She also crossed into Broadway and absolutely dominated it. Kinky Boots made her the first woman in history to win a Tony Award alone for Best Original Score. That means no co-writers, no shared credits, just her. A quiet reminder that the woman the world tried to paint as a comic book character was actually one of the most serious creative forces of her time. And here's where the chain connects. Cindy didn't just open the door for women to be playful. She opened the door for women to be unapologetically themselves. She carved a space where genre blending wasn't odd, where vulnerability wasn't weakness, and where visual storytelling mattered as much as the melody. Now, without her style rebellion, the landscape Madonna stepped into would have looked very different. Madonna took the baton Cindy flung into the air and turned authenticity into empire building using blocks, reinvention, and provocation as artistic tools. One built the runway, the other strutted down in stilettos. So yes, that brings us to our second lovely of the evening. That would be, pardon me, I'm still learning, y'all. So, if Cyndi Lauper cracked open the door for unapologetic female expression, Madonna charged through it like a storm. not to occupy space, but to reshape it. When she hit in the early 1980s, she wasn't the strongest vocalist. She wasn't the most trained dancer, and she certainly wasn't the industry's favorite. What she did have was an unmatched instinct for transformation. Madonna understood something revolutionary at the time. Image, narrative, and controversy were tools, not accidents. Every era of her career was a controlled burn, a reinvention time to cultural tension, and, a masterclass in how to stay unpredictable in an industry that punishes women for doing exactly that. Before she became the material girl, though, Madonna was hungry, broke dancer, sleeping on friends' floors in New York, hustling in a city that didn't hand out favors. She learned drums, guitars, and production basics so she wouldn't have to rely on anyone else. That self-directed edge shaped the sound of modern pop. When her debut album exploded, many expected her to flame out quickly, just another pretty blonde with a catchy hook. Instead, she released Like a Virgin and deliberately stepped into a center of America's cultural anxieties. She weaponized innocence and sexuality simultaneously, right? Flipping what could have been a scandal into a branding revolution. And she did it with calculation, not chaos. The white wedding dress, the writhing on MTV's stage, none of it was random. Every choice was content strategy before content strategy existed. What most people don't talk about is how Madonna controlled her music with the same precision she controlled her image. She co-wrote most of her biggest hits and had a hand in shaping the beats, the tone, the production. She pushed producers to modernize, to experiment with new technology, to try sounds that felt strange at the time. Vogue, for example, wasn't supposed to be a single at all. It was a B-side experiment inspired by underground ballroom culture. Wow. Yet it became one of the most iconic songs of all times, introducing millions to art form long before, the mainstream cared about representation. She didn't just pull from subcultures, she elevated them. Sometimes controversially, sometimes imperfectly, pardon me, but always boldly. Her influence didn't end with pop, okay? Madonna transformed the standard for touring. Before her, concerts were performance events. After her, they became cinematic universes. The Blonde Ambition tour alone changed live entertainment forever. The headset mic, pop stars use it today because Madonna made it mainstream. The multi-act theatrical show, Madonna again. She was combining choreography, storytelling, fashion, and multimedia elements when most artists were still standing behind a mic stand. Now, she turned tours into global phenomena and paved the way for artists like Janet Jackson, Beyonce, Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift to build world tours that feel like full-scale productions. But the layer that often gets overlooked is her resilience. Pardon me. And that's what we love here in the Iron Sharpening Iron universe. A woman's resilience. Listen, Madonna has been counted out at least 5 times in her career. Dismissed for aging, dismissed for controversy, dismissed for refusing to shrink herself the way the industry demanded. And yet every single time she found a way to just evolve. Reinvention isn't a gimmick for her. It's a philosophy. Even her missteps are studied, dissected, and often copied years later when culture finally catches up. That's the mark of someone operating ahead of her time. Now, here's the chain connection, because that's how we do here. Cyndi Lauper built the expressive playground, right? Breaking the expectation that women in music fit into a single tidy box, right? Madonna turned that playground into an empire, using reinvention as a weapon and refusing to let age and critics or cultural norms dictate her path. And from Madonna's foundation springs the next artist in our lineup. Someone who didn't just reinvent herself, she reinvented entire genres and carved out lanes for future vocal powerhouses. She brought rawness, edge, athletic choreography, and emotional transparency into the mix in ways that shifted the entire landscape of female pop performances. Pardon me. I'm just not getting my peas out today. Okay, peas. Eat your peas. Okay, Tina. You know it. Tina, my girl. Love this woman. Love this woman. If Madonna mastered reinvention, then Tina Turner mastered resurrection. There's no other way to put it. And that's a much harder art. Okay. Tina wasn't just a performer, she was a phenomenon of willpower, grit, electrifying presence that the music world had never seen before. When Tina walked on stage, she didn't perform the music, she became it. The stomp, the hair, the fire in every single syllable she sang. Tina Turner redefined what female power looked like long before empowerment was a hashtag or a movement. Now, most women know the broad strokes of her story: the early success, the abusive marriage, their dramatic breakup, the year of silence, but fewer people understand the scale of her eventual comeback. By the time Tina reclaimed her name and walked out alone, the industry believed she was finished. She was a woman in her 40s. She was coming from trauma. She didn't have a label pushing her. And yet, she believed in herself with a force so unshakable that history had no choice but to bend in her direction. Tina spent years performing in tiny little clubs, hotel lounges, and Vegas rooms, not as a downfall, but as a training. She rebuilt her career brick by brick, one fearless performance at a time. And then came 1984, the year everything snapped into alignment. Private Dancer. It wasn't supposed to be a phenomenon. It was supposed to be a modest release. Instead, it detonated. What's Love Got to Do with It became a global takeover, making Tina the oldest solo female artist ever to hit #1 at the time. Now, she didn't just come back. She rewrote the entire idea of what a comeback could be. Her voice, aged by experience, became her superpower, raw, textured, impossible to imitate. Women in pop today have permission to age in public because Tina Turner proved that power doesn't dim with time, it sharpens. Now, Tina also reshaped performance athletics. You know she did. Before her, female performance or female performers were expected to be polished, delicate, controlled. Tina was a storm, no doubt. Her live shows were explosive workouts, sweat, stomps, belts, kicks, demanding the cardio of a prize fighter and the soul of a gospel singer. Beyonce, Pink, Lizzo, Miley Cyrus, and nearly every major top performer today cite her as a blueprint. the wild hair toss, Tina, the legs as the artistic symbol, Tina, the fusion of rock attitude with pop accessibility, Tina. She made intensity glamorous, and she did it without ever abandoning her authenticity. There's another place or piece that people often overlook, though. Tina Turner was a rock star first. She wasn't chasing pop trends. She was fusing R&B, gospel emotion, okay, and rock and roll swagger decades before the crossover became mainstream. Mick Jagger openly admitted that he learned stage presence from watching her. Mick Jagger, y'all, come on. Imagine that. One of the most iconic frontmen of all time calling Tina Turner his teacher. Wow. Okay. Just wow. Now, their chemistry at Live Aid wasn't just iconic because of the music. It was iconic because the rock world had to acknowledge exactly who set the standard. Tina's spiritual transformation is another quiet force in her legacy. After she escaped her past, she rebuilt not just a career, but a life, grounding herself in discipline, meditation, and a deep belief in possibility. Pardon me. The reason her performances felt supernatural wasn't just talent, it was alignment. Tina Turner radiated peace off stage and fire on stage, a combination that made her magnetic at every age. Here's the chain connection. Cyndi Lauper cracked open the space for expressive womanhood. Madonna built an empire on reinvention and control. Tina Turner proved you can rise from the ashes and reign with more power than you had the first time. She represents the idea of earning back your crown and doing it so fiercely that the world forgets you ever lost it. And that takes us straight to the next link in our chain. Another beauty, if I may share. Another woman who reinvented longevity. She defined the industry and dominated multiple eras, multiple genres, and even multiple art forms. Now, if Tina Turner is the proof that you can rise from the ashes, Cher is the proof that some artists never burn in the first place. They simply shift or shape shift, shed a skin, and walk into the next era like they were born for it. Cher isn't just a musician, okay? She's a cultural constant, a force of nature, a woman who has remained relevant for 7 decades. Now, each time rewriting the rules of fame, identity, sound, fashion, and reinvention before the rest of the world could catch up. Most people remember that the early Sonny and Cher hits, the fringes, the harmonies, the variety show, but the real Cher, the architect of her own immortality, pardon me, it emerged later when she broke away as a solo artist and started taking risks that no woman in the business had ever dared to take. She was the first woman to have a #1 hit in the 60s, 70s, 90s, and the 2020s, spanning longer than some entire genres lasted. Now, that kind of run in music is unheard of unless you're reinventing not just your sound, but the framework the industry uses to decide who gets to stay. Cher's genius is in her courage to pivot. When pop started changing in the late 1970s, she didn't cling to her old image. She walked straight into rock, hard rock, leather, chains, hair down her back, vocal grit that punched right through radio. Songs like If I Could Turn Back Time, they were not just hits, they were declarations that Cher was not going to age out of, fade out of, or even be put out to pasture by an industry that loves youth more than talent. She doubled down on reinvention. And when people raised eyebrows, she raised the stakes. Then came Belief, right? The moment that Cher leapt 20 years ahead of everybody else, she didn't just make a comeback. She changed the sound of modern pop with auto-tune effects that the entire world would later adopt. Most people don't know this. The robotic vocal bend in Believe wasn't meant to be a gimmick. It was Cher asking producers to make me sound like I'm from the future. And they did. They created a vocal effect so iconic it became a new genre fingerprint. Anyone who uses pitch manipulation today, like from T-Pain to modern hyper pop artists, they owe a direct line back to Cher. Plain and simple. That's the way it is. But her music reinvention wasn't the only reason she stayed relevant either. Pardon me. Oh, hi, Big Jack. Good to see ya. Okay, so Cher built a second empire in acting. When the world doubted her dramatic chops, she delivered Mask, Moonstruck, and an Academy Award. Not because she wanted Hollywood's approval, but because she was determined to prove that she could dominate another field entirely. And she did. She became the blueprint for the artist decades before the term existed. Okay, Cher's deeper legacy, the one most people overlook, is her refusal to be defined by age. She shattered every expectation the industry placed on women. She wore what she wanted, sang how she wanted, and carried herself with the fearless glamour of someone who knew exactly who she was. Even now, in her late 70s, she remains sharp. From political commentary to fashion to chart comebacks, this is a woman who has never apologized for being iconic. And this is where she links directly to Tina. Tina showed the world you can rise again, and Cher showed the world you can never descend in the you can never descend in the first place if you stay ahead of the wave. This leads us to the next link in our chain, a woman who took all that reinvention, all that power, all that defiance, and amplified it with vocal force. And I know y'all gonna love this one. Yes, it is. It's our beauty, Miss Whitney Houston. Yes, she did. Whitney Houston, the voice that changed the global standard, the woman whose talent became the measurement for every vocalist who ever came after her. Cher was amazing, Big Jack. Absolutely, even with Sunny. Absolutely. She's just one of my idols, I had to put her in here. So, all right. If Cher's power is reinvention and Tina's power is resurrection, Whitney Houston's power was purity. The kind of once in a century talent that doesn't just rise above the industry, it rewrites the entire industry around it. Whitney didn't compete. She reset the measurement. Before Whitney, vocalists were judged by style, stamina, range, or tone. After Whitney, they were judged by whether they could do what she did. And the answer was almost always no. Yes, best national anthem in Super Bowl history. You got that right. Gone way too soon. Oh, so too soon. So Whitney's musical DNA wasn't built in a studio, right? It was built in New Jersey churches where she's surrounded by gospel royalty. Her mother, Sissy Houston, her cousin, Dionne Warwick, and her godmother, Aretha Franklin. That's the Holy Trinity that shaped her. People don't realize how unusual that is. Whitney had the musical foundation of three powerhouse women who each dominated their own lanes. She learned control from Sissy, emotional phrasing from Dion, and spiritual fire from Aretha. When she opened her mouth to sing, the world heard all three at once, seamlessly fused into something entirely new. Her rise was so amazing, but it wasn't accidental. Clive Davis didn't just sign Whitney because she could sing. He signed her because she had the voice producers dreamed of but never expected to find. Every major songwriter of the 1980s wanted to write for Whitney because they knew she could take a simple melody and turn it into an anthem. Greatest love of all, how will I know? I want to dance with somebody. These weren't just hits. They were global detonations that brought pop, gospel, R&B, and dance together in a way that no one had imagined. What set Whitney apart from technically was her precision. Most powerhouse singers, they push. Whitney floated that upper register that the one singers still try and fail to imitate. Wasn't about belting. It was a controlled release, a ribbon of sound that it just stayed perfectly in tune no matter how high she soared. She could shift from velvet softness to hurricane strength in a single breath. Gosh, she was so amazing. Pardon me. Okay, that's a skill singers train for a lifetime and still never master unless they're born with it, and she was. Then came The Bodyguard. Yes, one of my favorites, of course. Not just a movie, but it was a cultural eruption. Whitney was already a superstar, okay? But I Will Always Love You turned her into a global myth. That opening a cappella line, oh my gosh, that wasn't how the song was originally arranged. We all know Dolly's version. Of course, I know Dolly's version. You know me and Dolly. We're like this, right? But that was Whitney deciding to strip the music away and trust her voice to carry the moment. It became one of the most iconic decisions in music history, in her history. The song spent 14 weeks at number one. Yeah, 14 weeks. The soundtrack became the best-selling movie soundtrack of all time, and Whitney became the most awarded female artist in history. The deeper truth of Whitney's legacy isn't the awards, though. It's the standard. Every singing competition, every vocal coach, every reality show judge asking, can you hit the Whitney note? That's the benchmark she set. Ariana Grande, Beyonce, Jennifer Hudson, Jasmine Sullivan, Celine Dion, all of them openly admit that Whitney was the model. Before Whitney, talent was impressive. After Whitney, talent had a measuring stick. And that takes our chain into the next link. From Cher to Tina is powerful. Cher showed the power of longevity. Tina showed the power of rising again. Whitney showed the power of being so gifted that the world rearranges itself around your voice. She didn't just inspire artists. She changed what audiences expected from a vocalist forever. And this one is going to bring us to our next link, which is a woman whose range, control, and emotional depth placed her in the same rare category of vocal architects. Now, y'all might think she's a little bit young for this, but she's not, because she's in this, okay? Mariah Carey. Now, Mariah was a technician, an innovator, or is, pardon me, the songwriter who blended gospel, pop, and hip hop to create an entirely new sound for the 1990s. If Whitney set the vocal standard, Mariah Carey engineered the blueprint for the modern singer. Mariah isn't just a voice. She is a vocal engineer, a songwriter, a producer, a stylist, a genre scientist. She didn't walk into the 90s to take up space. She walked to reshape it. And she did it pretty thoroughly. That even today, 30 years later, artists still measure themselves against Mariah built. Most people know she has range. Okay. They know about the whistle register, which is crazy, right? And yeah, we've all tried to reach that. Even men try to reach them. My husband tried to reach that. Lord help me. But they know she wrote All I Want for Christmas Is You in 15 minutes too, right? No, I didn't think so. But what people don't know for real is that Mariah Carey's genius sits at the intersection of raw God-given talent and technical mastery. She didn't just hit whistle notes. She controlled them. She shaped them, layered them in her own harmonies, and then she stacked her own backgrounds until her songs became sonic cathedrals. She is one of the few artists in history who can build a choir out of one voice, her own. Her rise is the stuff of music industry lore. When 18-year-old Mariah handed her demo tape to Tommy Mottola, I think is his name, at the industry party, she didn't simply hear a good singer. He heard a once-in-a-generation force, and Mariah proved him right with her debut album. Vision of Love wasn't a song, it was a statement. Now, she delivered so clean, so controlled, so effortless that it permanently altered vocal training. After that performance, every single competition, every choir solo, every pop audition tried to imitate the Mariah run. Vocal cultures changed overnight. But, okay, her technical skill is just one pillar, right? The one people overlook, is that Mariah Carey is one of the greatest songwriters of all time. She didn't just show up to sing hits written for her. She wrote them, shaped them, built them. Every number one track she has more than any solo artist in history, contains her fingerprints. She writes lyrics that are romantic without being naive, emotional without being melodramatic. I can't say that word. And melodic without being predictable. And then she broke the sound barrier of the 90s with the Fantasy remix featuring Dirty Bastard. Mariah merged hip hop and pop in a way that labels were terrified of. Okay. But audiences, they devoured it. That remix, it didn't just resurrect her career. It redefined pop music without Mariah's insistence on hip hop integration. There is no Beyonce crossover, no Rihanna template, no Ariana blend. no global shift in the sound of radio. She wasn't following a trend, she created it. Mariah's voice is its own ecosystem. The whistle register in her comet tail, okay, the mid range in her storytelling, the belts are her fireworks, and the lower tones, the ones she rarely gets credit for, are pure velvet. She built a vocal identity that required zero dancing, zero gimmicks, zero pyrotechnics. Her pyrotechnics came from her throat. And the thing people forget, she did it while battling stage fright, industry pressure, and personal turmoil, and still delivered performances that felt like they were carved from crystals. Now, Mariah's longevity is also unmatched. 30 years after its release, All I Want for Christmas Is You remains the highest earning holiday song of modern times. A cultural reset that returns every December like a queen reclaiming her throne. And let's not forget her record 19 number one singles, the most of any solo artist in Billboard history, not female artists, not diva artists. Mariah is the moment every decade. And now, in the chain connection, Whitney set the gold standard for pure vocal excellence. Mariah took the standard, studied it, expanded it, and then fused it with pop, R&B, and gospel and hip hop to create a new sound entirely. Whitney showed the world the peak of vocal power. Mariah showed the world how to craft and control that power across genres, which leads us to the next queen in the chain, Janet Jackson. Now, sorry, I'm working on it. All right. Janet Jackson, the innovator of rhythm, choreography, and socially conscious pop, and the woman who defined the blueprint for modern stage production and R&B fusion. Janet didn't just enter the music industry. She infiltrated it, okay? She rewired it and left every artist after her taking notes. She is the quiet, revolutionary, soft-spoken, off-stage, seismic on-stage. Janet wasn't trying to be the loudest voice. She was the most intentional. Every beat, every breath, every movement she delivered was designed. And the entire architecture of modern pop owes its structure to her. So, Janet's story is deeper than being a Jackson. Hello, Jacksons. More artists would crumble under that last name, but Janet didn't run from her legacy. She reauthored it, I guess. Her early teen records were polished but restrained, controlled by a machine that, it didn't yet understand who she was. And when she finally broke away from the control era, she didn't just take ownership, she declared war on the idea that women in pop should be compliant. The album was rebellion for rebellion's sake, okay? Or it wasn't, pardon me. It was Janet planting her flag, my life, my sound, my direction. That message resonated so deeply that control became a cultural rallying cry, especially for young women who had never seen themselves centered in mainstream pop power. Technically, Janet built an empire on precision rhythm. She was the first major pop act to make choreography the core of her identity. Before her, dancing supported the music. After her, dancing was the music. The sharpness the military style hits, the synchronized squads, all of the traces back to Janet and her long-standing partnership with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Their production style wasn't just beats, it was architecture. They crafted soundscapes around Janet's whispery, intimate vocal tone, creating a tension between softness and aggression nobody else had really mastered. And then came Rhythm Nation. I can't talk today, y'all. Then came Rhythm Nation 1814, an album so ambitious, so socially conscious, and so musically advanced that it still feels modern today. Janet didn't just talk about social issues, though. She built an entire universe around them: racism, poverty, institutional neglect. Janet tackled them with the urgency of a documentary filmmaker, you know? Rhythm Nation isn't just an album, it's a manifesto. And the fact that she used pop radio to deliver messages the news wouldn't touch, it's kind of revolutionary, you think? What people forget is how dangerously futuristic Janet's production was. Industrial sound, drum machine stutters, layered harmonies, syncopated whispers, I don't know, stacked percussion or percussive breaths, you know? She essentially invented the breathy R&B pop. That style that every 2000s artist, Aaliyah, see, here I go, Aaliyah, Britney, Sierra, TLC, Beyonce, they built their careers on this. Janet's sound wasn't accidental, it was engineered. Her vocal restraint wasn't a limitation, it was a choice and a signature. Now, Janet's live performances were another category entirely. She fused Broadway discipline with street style and music video crispness. She introduced headset mics to mainstream pop. She made arena tours feel like cinematic events with narrative arcs, costume shifts, and choreography that hit like a steel drum line. Every modern pop tour from Beyonce's to Usher's to BTS, it built on the template Janet crafted. And then there's her courage. Okay, Janet was one of the first global pop stars to express sensuality from a place of ownership instead of exploitation. The Velvet Rope wasn't just an album, it was a therapy in musical form. She talked openly about trauma, identity, desire, vulnerability, and mental health long before other artists felt it safe to do so. That album alone influenced an entire generation of R&B and pop artists who learned that transparency could be power, you know, instead of career ending. Here's the chain connection. Whitney set the standard for vocal excellence. Mariah expanded it and fused genres into a new era. Janet took vocal nuance, emotional storytelling, and rhythmic intelligence and built the blueprint for visual choreography and thematic world of modern pop. She didn't just influence performers, she influenced performance itself. And now we can link seamlessly into our next queen, a voice with enough steel to dominate rock, enough grit to redefine country, and enough soul to cross every genre without asking permission. Let's see here. We got little Miss Stevie Nicks. Ooh, come on now. Thank you. Now then. Stevie Nicks, the mystic poet of rock. Okay, the woman who turned her diary into global anthems and one of the most influential women songwriters of all time. Now, she's not simply a rock star, okay? She is a cultural archetype that the women who turned vulnerability into power, heartbreak into scripture, and personal history into one of the most distinct musical identities in American art. If Janet Jackson engineered structure, Stevie Nicks opened a portal. Her songwriting didn't follow trends, it created landscapes. And for nearly 5 decades, artists have been walking through those landscapes trying to understand how she did it. Stevie began writing in notebooks long before she ever stepped into a studio. Pardon me. She wasn't trying to be clever or commercial. She was documenting her life in metaphors, dreams, and symbols. That became her trademark, confessional poetry draped in myth. Most songwriters choose the one lane, literal or symbolic. Stevie blended them so seamlessly that listeners saw themselves in her songs even if they didn't fully understand the imagery. Landslide isn't just a song, it's a mirror. Dreams isn't just a hit, it's a prophecy. Um, they're not compositions, they're emotional coordinates. Her breakthrough came when she and Lindsey Buckingham joined Fleetwood Mac. That lineup didn't just succeed, it combusted into brilliance. The emotional tension inside the band created one of the most successful albums in history, Rumors. That was a record that survives because its pain was real and raw and unfiltered. Stevie wasn't writing breakup songs, she was writing while breaking. And yet she delivered melodies so hypnotic that the pain became beautiful. That's her superpower, turning wounds into wisdom without ever sounding defeated. Now, what people overlook is how musically unconventional Stevie is. Her voice is instantly recognizable, raspy yet angelic, sharp yet soft, powerful yet fragile. She sings slightly behind the beat, creating a floating, haunted effect that producers spent years trying to imitate without success. Her phrasing bends like it's alive. Her melodies defy standards, pop cultures, and she writes in modes and tones that feel ancient or folkloric and modern all at once. You can't teach that what Stevie does. It comes from intuition sharpened by living, breaking, rising, and choosing honesty every time. Stevie's cultural impact is just as massive. She pioneered the bohemian rock goddess aesthetic. Shawls, boots, chiffon, moon symbols, not as a costume, but as armor. That style became an identity for millions of women who never saw themselves reflected in the polished glamour of mainstream pop. Stevie made it normal to be sensitive, spiritual, wild, introspective, emotional, and powerful at the same time. She carved out a space where femininity wasn't decoration, it was depth. In her solo career, it proved that her magic wasn't independent on Fleetwood Mac, or wasn't dependent on Fleetwood Mac. Belladonna debuted at number one, a feat unheard of for women in rock at the time. And tracks like Edge of 17 became generational anthems. She collaborated with Tom Petty, Don Henley, and even Prince with ease, not because she needed validation, but because her artistic presence was so strong, it blended effortlessly with any genre that she touched. The grit of rock, the sensitivity of folk, the mysticism of pop. Stevie made them all sound like home. Her influence is everywhere. Florence and the Machine, Taylor Swift, Miley, Lana Del Rey. All of them carry traces of Stevie's ethereal emotional architecture, even the resurgence of witchy aesthetics, moon symbolism, and folk rock confessionals in modern music. That's Stevie's fingerprints across multiple genres and generations. Now, we've gotten so far into all this. I would love to go on, but another singer another day, right? Listen, guys, Queens this week, it's Kings next week. I'm getting myself back on up here. And we got through that pretty good, I'd say. So tonight we just wrapped up a Powerhouse Jukebox Journey with 12, well, pardon me, not 12, with these queens who built the soundtrack of our lives. But listen, next week we flip the crown. It's Kings Week, a full royal procession of legends who shaped rock, soul, blues, and the very bones of modern music. If you thought tonight hit hard, you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm getting into this. I love my jukebox journey, y'all. And don't forget, everything we build here is part of a larger family. The Iron Sharpening Iron Universe. You guys do not ever, ever look over them, because that's my foundation right there. We are all each other's foundation at this point, because you know what? This place is amazing and we are making it even better. Okay. The Iron Sharpening Iron Universe stays right here with us. The Jukebox Journey stays right here with us. And Ask a Bee, that too. Tomorrow, I'm taking a day off. But we have at 3 p.m. Central, because I don't know what time it is for you. I think it's 1 p.m. your time, Miss Davina, is our time for Mama Lions to lift up a powerful voice from our own community. Voices of resilience. Guys, you got to be there no matter what the time zone is. I do not care, okay? Be there. If you ever needed strength, testimony, or a reminder that you're not in this alone, you want to be in that room tomorrow, okay? Tune in, share it out, and keep your calendars ready. Queens was tonight. Kings is next week, or next Saturday, 8 p.m. Don't miss us Monday at noon for Ask a Bee. So, all right, honeybees, what a night. Tonight, we didn't celebrate songs. We celebrated stories, legacies, lives that rewrote entire eras. Women whose courage, grit, reinvention, and impact shaped the world far beyond the stage. 12, or all these queens, all these journeys, all these reasons history looks the way it does today. What we experienced wasn't performance, it was perspective. It was remembering how powerful a voice can be, how far determination can take someone, and how every queen we highlighted tonight cracked open a door for someone behind her. And this is what the BBTV and the Iron Sharpening Iron Universe is built on. Ask a Bee, Jukebox Journey, Iron Sharpening Iron, Ladies' Diaries, Gentleman's Journal. Different shows, same mission. Lift, ignite, inspire, and remind people who they truly are. But we're not done. Okay? We're not done. Come 2026, it becomes a whole new ball game, and you're going to see us all shine. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Plus Sister, Big Jack, Ellen, everybody for being here. Love y'all. Bye-bye.